Hi, everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also in all TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, as usual. Aaron William Freeland, and we have a guest host today. This is Honey. Honey, you want to say hello? Hello, hello. Honey won't
Hello,
be.
honey. How are you?
Honey's missing her sister, and
Yeah.
she's feeling a little down, a little depressed, right, Honey? Right? Yeah, I know. You're a good dog. How's it going, Aaron?
It's not going too badly, all things considered. Next week is going to be fun for me. It's relatively busy for me. So, Wednesday, I will be attending a live sports event at Scotiabank Arena. Sorry, not Scotiabank, Coca-Cola Coliseum. Friday, I will be attending a concert. And Saturday, I'll be at a rock game. So, uh, busy week coming up. How about you?
I'll be walking the streets.
Oh, I know Tick still hasn't been found yet, but
No, no. I had a call today that somebody brought a dog looking like her to the pound, and they waited there a little while and didn't think that they'd get any help with the dog, so they just brought the dog home with them.
oh goodness.
I don't
Uh,
believe that, but anyway, it
I
is
mean,
what it is.
she's due for her shots, right? And she does
Yeah.
have an ear issue, so there could be potentially that.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah.
Hopefully, she's chipped. So all that has to happen is somebody, which usually is the case for veterinarians and also the pound. They have the ability to identify dogs. So hopefully they'll find her. So this one's feeling a little down because she misses her sister, and we're trying to find her. We're trying to find her, but this one here just isn't handling it too well. We go out looking for her all the time. Anyway, she comes with us too. All right, let's get on to what we're here for. Bonanza news brief. In the news today, Haiti's prime minister to resign. Canadian concerns as product of the USA meat labels announced.
There's a whole bunch of stuff that I figured a little bit of a news brief would be good with. As it stands, Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry has said he'll resign once a transitional presidential council is created. Haiti's been overwhelmed by violent gangs that some experts say have unleashed a low-scale civil war in the island country. Henry made the announcement hours after Caribbean leaders and officials from other countries, including Canada and the States, met in Jamaica to discuss a solution to halt Haiti's spiraling crisis. It's not yet clear who will be chosen to be Henry's replacement, but we will be keeping an eye on this and provide updates as we can. Canada's federal government, as well as organizations representing some of the nation's beef producers, warn of decisions south of the border about product of the USA labels on meat, poultry, and eggs could disrupt supply chains. The United States Department of Agriculture announced Monday that there's a final rule on conditions for when voluntary product of the USA or made in the USA labels may be used, stating they'll be allowed for meat, poultry, and egg products only when they are derived from animals born, raised, slaughtered, and processed in the United States. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack said in a news release the rule, which takes effect in 2026, will ensure that when consumers see the label, they can know that every step involved from birth to processing was made in America. Um, some of the other stories that we're trying to keep a tab on here, Quebec is going to be presenting, or has presented at this point, a restrained budget. He says the Quebec's finance minister, Eric Girard, says that the budget he's expected to present will be what he described as restrained amidst what he describes again as provincial economy in stagnation. He told reporters south of Montreal that the billions of dollars in wage increases recently negotiated with teachers and healthcare workers have further restricted the government's spending ambitions. Quebec's real GDP, which is adjusted for inflation, contracted in the second quarter of 2023 by 0.4% and by 0.2% in the third quarter. And the budget they presented is actually running an $11 billion deficit. For those of you animal lovers and divers out there, there's actually a coral reef off the BC coast that technically shouldn't exist. Charisse Duprez says knowledge from local First Nations of a bump on the seafloor where the fish like to be set off to this, where the fish like to be set off the discovery of Canada's only known live coral reef. Um, Dupree says she worked with the Katasu and Heiltsuk First Nations to search the ocean floor off BC's central coast and Finlay's Channel, about 500 kilometers northwest of Vancouver. Dupree is the head of the deep sea ecology program for the Fisheries Department and says that they were on their last scheduled remote submersible dive in 2021 when they found the Lophelia coral reef. And last story in this first breakfast bonanza event, farmers are bracing for a 90% loss of BC stone fruit. Um, at West Kelowna's Painters Fruit Market, Jenny Oliver, who's the owner, says she won't be offering you pick peaches or apricots from the orchards behind her fruit stand this year. Instead, she's going to be hoping to entice visitors to come by and pick their own tomatoes or flowers and take tours of the orchards, even if they're not producing fruit this summer. Oliver is one of many BC stone fruit farmers bracing for a near non-existent harvest this summer and trying to find new ways to manage. At issue, of course, were the droughts and the wildfires of the last year that are severely impacting these people's ability to earn their living this year.
I'll do wah 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 now before I do the statement. Apparently, Canadians are very shocked. There's a stinky story. Apparently, deodorant's too expensive at Shoppers Drug Mart. That stinks. Right?
Yeah, on there's a Reddit called Loblaws is out of control, which normally goes to highlight price picadillos there, but there is a brand called Native at Shoppers Drug Mart that is currently selling at $20.99 for a 75-gram bar.
Well,
Now it's supposed to be a premium without parabens and without oxidants and whatnot in it that is supposed to be safer for individuals. But at the same time, the $21 price tag is one of those sorts of things where it's like, really? I know it's all natural and it's supposed to be better for you. I get it. But at the same time, it seems a little bit ridiculous.
so apparently, Canadians are unsure that the online harms bill will make social media safer. Why is that, Aaron?
Well, there's the usual amount of skepticism when it comes to these sorts of things. Skepticism about what the bill is actually doing, whether or not the government is trying to control the information the population it sees, and a general lack of trust for the government in general. Leger surveyed 1,527 Canadians about the proposed measures. Um, Now, because it was an online survey, there is no margin of error because they're not considered truly random samples. Anybody that's seeking out this poll wants to find the poll. 41% of respondents said that they believe the legislation will actually create safer online platforms, including making it easier to remove sexual abuse images. Another 32% said that they don't think that that's actually going to happen. 33% answered that they somewhat trust the government, while 27% said they do not trust the government at all, and 23% answered that they barely trust the government to protect their free speech. Around 20% of those surveyed said that they most trust the federal conservatives to regulate materials, with 17% of respondents choosing Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberals, and only 13% choosing the New Democrats. It's one of those everybody's got their own opinion, and now that I've got a platform to express it, you're going to hear about it, sort of situations.
But I really think I heard a commentary a little while ago, and it kind of almost made sense a little bit. As a society in the world, not just Canada, not just the US, but everywhere, we're in this funky time where we've got this slow burning funk going on with people, where we're very upset and frustrated and depressed, really. Not in a regular way, but in a way that, as a group, we don't feel very confident about stuff going on around us. We've lost our ability to have faith, to believe, and I don't mean religious faith. I mean faith generally in things, being able to work out because of the pandemic. What we're seeing here is an attitude that's been fostered by the epidemic, and all of a sudden now we just don't think anything's good, and we don't believe in authorities, and that seems to reflect well as far as facts are concerned around the world. We're having a hard time thinking that we can handle stuff by communicating and being adult about it. We're in a point now where everything's so frustrating that people feel the only way it'll work is if you have people who are extreme in their behavior, extreme in their rules, extreme in how they deal with issues. It's almost like I don't know, like the pendulum has gone to that side of the equation. I can't wait till we get to the other, because the extreme answers to these things are not going to make things better, going to make it worse. So, and not that Trudeau doesn't deserve negative attitudes. Heck, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying anybody who's in charge right now, elected, are going to have a hard time, just because people have lost faith in the system and in the way things work.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of questioning authority. I'm a big fan of doing research from credible sources, as I'm sure a lot of people out there are. What we're seeing here is, again, as you mentioned, a complete pendulum swing in the wrong direction. And when it overcorrects, as it most certainly will, we are going to be in for some interesting times. Um,
Absolutely.
I mean, just recently there have been measles outbreaks in a children's hospital in California. Somebody died of the plague in New Mexico earlier this week, and that is the first recorded incident of the plague since 2020, which is something that I thought was completely eradicated, but apparently not. And it's this attitude that people have where they distrust everything. Science is made to change. It is
Yeah.
not static. It is constantly evolving. If they tell you one thing one month and they tell you something else the next month, it's because they've discovered something new. They're not trying to mess with your freedoms. They're not trying to mess with your heads. They're not trying to take away your liberties. This is how science works. It's a process of discovery. And I wish more people would recognize that.
Pun intended, negativity seems to be plaguing us.
Yeah, I'm positive it's negativity that's the problem.
Yeah, and hopefully at some point. Anyway, BC to hike commercial vehicle crash penalties after 35 over height truck incidents.
So they're looking at putting the brakes on crashes here. There have been a lot of incidents involving vehicles trying to fit where they shouldn't, like trying to put a marshmallow into a piggy bank. And it's fascinating to watch, but at the same time, very detrimental to roads, very detrimental to infrastructure, very detrimental to supply chains. Um, Over the past few years, because of those 35 crashes, um, they are looking to change cash fines from $500 to $598. Um, Sorry, from $598 to significantly more than that. They haven't put a ceiling on it yet, but they're going to be looking at repeat offenders. They're going to be looking at individuals who know their vehicles are overhyped but deliberately choose to go through smaller places than they can fit. Some of the situation is actually kind of reminding me of one of my favorite YouTube channels, which is called 11 feet 8 inches plus 8, which is a video camera that's been set up underneath a railway overpass, and you get to watch people just repeatedly drive their trucks into it. It's brilliant. But at the same time, this is one of those things that you got to kind of take charge of.
Speaks to the issue.
Yeah.
Let's talk about here in Ontario, citing poaching, violent incidents. Ottawa says Elver Fishery won't open this year.
Now, elvers are typically sold live to aquaculture operations in China and Japan where they're grown for food. Prices can reach as high as $5,000 per kilogram, which is what they were at in 2022. However, last year, the federal government closed the fishery on April 15th after reports of violence related to unauthorized fishing or poaching, as well as accusations of assault and even shots fired rang out. Um, Problems with the fishery could be solved with new regulations covering indigenous fishers, licensing, exporting, and the tracking of legally caught eels. But those wouldn't be in place, before this next season is actually supposed to start. It's a very lucrative business, and the problem is too many people now are deciding that they're going to try to cash in on it and trying to get their share in not the most legal of ways.
Some mayors are upset after Southwest New Brunswick left out of the federal housing funding.
So basically we're looking at an area of southwest New Brunswick here. There are several mayors who are claiming that the federal government didn't seem to care about their part of the province. Eastern Charlotte is one of those municipalities, as well as St. Stephen, McAdam, Grand Manan, Campobello, and Fundy Shores. They all applied and were denied for support under the Federal Housing Accelerator Fund. The situation in Eastern Charlotte is particularly bad um, because there are several large employers who badly need housing for their workers, but they can't seem to find any. The Housing Accelerator Program, of course, uh, was originally put into place to try to help housing get done quickly for those individuals in need.
Labrador winter, 5 degrees centigrade warmer than average as indigenous communities struggle to adapt.
So obviously, just like here, there's been a lack of snow and ice in Labrador, and indigenous communities, sorry, are having to adapt their cultural practices. Also, a lot of the businesses in there run on tourism, and in particular, dog sledding and what have you, and that's something that they haven't been able to do. Um, the trip for one of the examples here is there was a group of Innu students who were set to join a hike from the Mealy Mountains to Shashatshu, a trip that has been done many times before, but it was canceled because the warming temperatures made the ice that they were going to be traveling on unsafe. Um, so it's the fact that climate change is taking such a large bite out of these indigenous communities. They've also had to call off dog sled races, and they've also had to call off a whole bunch of stuff that ordinarily wouldn't be an issue, but because of climate change now is.
Meet 10 candidates vying for, well, to become the next mayor of Mississauga.
Now, for those of you who live out in my neck of the woods, hey, Bonnie Crombie is the new liberal leader of the provincial Liberal Party. Um, what we're currently looking at here is a special election. Um, the nomination period is going to be March 7th to April 26th. Candidates will have until June 10th to get their message out and motivate Mississaugans to vote. Some of the top issues that we're going to be looking at here will be housing and growth issues. Um, Different candidates obviously have different perspectives on how this should be run, but the fact that we're expanding with the LRT up here Ontario Street also indicates that more housing is going to need to be built along that particular corridor, and we don't have the access and we don't have the ability to support that. Dapika Demerla from Mississauga Ward 7 is going to be running. Stephen Dasco from Ward 1. Carolyn Parrish. Some of you may remember her as a federal MP from 1993 to 2006. Will be running. Alvin Tedjo, who's my counselor out of Ward 2, is also going to be running. Peter McCallion, Hazel McCallion's son, will also be putting his name into the hat, as well as David Shaw, George Tavares, not related to them. Peter Tolius is going to be running, as well as Amir Ali. Um, Saya Jaffrey was also throwing his name into the ring for it, but unfortunately, CBC was unable to get in touch with him.
USA House passes bill that would lead to TikTok ban if the Chinese owner doesn't sell. The Senate path is unclear yet, but it's got to clear the House first.
That's right. They passed a bill that would lead to a nationwide ban of the video app, which currently 170 million Americans currently use. The bill was passed by a vote of 352 to 65, and it now goes to the Senate, where, um, you know, it's not necessarily clear how that's going to pay out. House passage of the bill obviously is only the first step. The Senate would also need to pass the measure for it to become law without any adjustments before it can be put in as legislation. Um, the thinking here was because it is uh, because it is a Chinese-based application, there are fears that they are stealing American data wholesale and pirating information and spying through the app, um, all of which is, at least so far, has been shown to be unfounded. But we'll have to see. It looks like they're trying to take a very popular social media app away from a legitimate Chinese company. Uh, Basically, we're looking at capitalism by government here, which is not necessarily a good thing.
I don't agree 100% with that. The Chinese have historically stolen technology from the Americans. So they don't pay for stuff. They take technology and they basically take it over and they don't pay for it. This is just another way of basically saying, let's fight back from the American perspective, from actually our perspective. Um, China isn't known as respecting people's rights in regards to technology. So I don't have any sympathy for China. They can get rid of it for all I care, just because of that. I don't care about. It's not about Chinese people at all. It's about the Chinese government. It's just like us. When we have a government or someone in charge that is irresponsible and well below character wise, I won't like them here either. And China has displayed their contempt for being a partner when it comes to to doing things and paying for what they should pay, and don't. They've done it historically. So the Americans here are in a position where they can be idiots too. It doesn't mean that two wrongs don't make a right. It just means there is an animosity between China and the U.S. It's not even something that we can guess at. It's well known. Let's talk about Craig Dickinson goes from the Saskatchewan Roughriders to join his brother on the Stampeders staff.
Yeah, and it's a return to Calgary actually for Dickinson, who was a member of the staff for 7 years, including the 2008 season, where he was part of the Grey Cup championship winning team. Um, Craig is obviously well connected in both the CFL and U.S. football, um, so he's going to be joining Dave there. Um, South of the border, Dickinson has actually coached at the University of Montana, his alma mater, and Utah State, as well as for the Chargers and the Raiders in the NFL. So there is a very valuable pedigree that he's bringing to the table here. Um, I have I have no doubt that he's going to fit in well, and this is only going to be a net positive for 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 the Stampeders.
Stampeders sign American DB Josh Thomas.
Yeah, he's played 4 games in the NFL, two with the Buffalo Bills, sorry, and two with the Arizona Cardinals, and recorded 5 tackles. He was signed as an undrafted free agent by Buffalo in 2020, and has also attended training camp with the Carolina Panthers. Um, he played 56 games at Appalachian State and was named second team All Sun Belt Conference in 2019 after recording 72 tackles, one fumble recovery, and one interception return touchdown. Over the course of his career at Appalachian State, Thomas accumulated 163 tackles, including 7.5 tackles for loss, 7 interceptions, one forced fumble, and one fumble recovery. So this is a valuable addition to their defensive backs. Hopefully, he'll have as much of an impact for them as he had at college.
Stamps add American DB Mako Dotson.
He attended a rookie minicamp with the Houston Texans back in 2022. The following year, that would be last year, 2023, he played 9 games for the New Jersey Generals of the USFL and made 14 tackles. Um, he played his final 2 seasons of college eligibility at Florida State. In 10 games for the Noles, he had 21 tackles and forced a fumble. He played 12 games at Georgia Tech in 2016 and made 2 tackles there and had 4 interceptions, including a pick six at Garden City.
Riders add defensive lineman R.G. McIntosh.
Now, McIntosh was actually a fifth round, 139th overall pick of the New York Giants in 2018. He played 18 games, notching 11 solo tackles and 2 sacks. Since then, he spent time with the Saints, Packers, Colts, and Dolphins. He was a top 40 defensive end prospect out of high school, um, and was offered by Clemson and Florida before ultimately committing to Miami. So there is some pedigree there as well. The Riders are looking to make themselves into full-on contenders here.
There you go. Elk sign American linebacker Nick Anderson.
Now, Anderson spent 4 seasons at Tulane between 2019 and 2022, totaling 283 tackles, 29 for loss, 10.5 sacks, 6 pass deflections, and 3 forced fumbles. That was when he was playing with the Green Wave. He attended training camp with the New Orleans Saints in 2023, played in 3 preseason games, and registered 4 tackles. Now, in addition to bringing Anderson on board, the Elks have also signed American DB James Wiggins. Wiggins signs with the Elks in December of 2023, but was released to pursue other opportunities.
The Elk sign American linebacker Nick. Oh, sorry. No, I'm sorry. We said that. The AHL health issues forced Cody Hodgson to retire from hockey at age 26. Now, 8 years later, he scores a goal again after 8 years.
Yeah, this was one of those cases where he was one of those players that I thought the Leafs would have eventually picked up because he was good. But about 8 years ago, he started noticing some odd symptoms. He was shaking. His body felt unusually hot. He had an abnormal heartbeat. He was having a tough time breathing. Tests showed his liver and kidneys were damaged. He was diagnosed with malignant hyperthermia, which is related to a mutation in the RYR1 gene that assists with muscle contraction. It also led to episodes of rhabdomyolysis. For those of you who do CrossFit, that is when your muscles will literally eat themselves and you get internal bleeding. It's not a good thing.
Yikes.
He was prescribed dantrolene, which is a medication that suppressed the symptoms, but also left him too drowsy to play the game competitively. All of the stuff that they were telling him he shouldn't be doing was exactly what he needed to do in order to be a hockey player. Don't get yourself too hot. Don't be out in cold conditions. Don't overexert yourself. So, he stopped playing hockey at 26. He started feeling better. He's got in contact with the RYR1 Foundation, which supports research to find treatment or cure for it. And, spent a lot of time actually working with the Predators in their youth development programs, which basically consisted of teaching hockey to kids across the Southeast states. Then he started to feel better. So now at the age of 34, after losing 40 pounds to get back to his playing weight of 190, the Milwaukee Admirals decided to give him a go. So, he now holds the NHL record for the longest gap between goals. So welcome back to Cody. It's good to see him back on the ice. I wish him all the success in the world.
Former player Anson Carter, you've seen him on Hockey Night in Canada, is, I guess he's assuming 3 times the charm as far as Atlanta keeping the hockey team.
Yeah, for those of you who remember, there was a team called the Atlanta Flames. And after that, there was a team called the Atlanta Thrashers. Now Anson Carter is part.
They got thrashed into non-existent.
Well, the Flames originally moved to Calgary, and then the Thrashers moved to Winnipeg.
Right.
So
So maybe Hamilton will get a team after all.
You never know.
If you know what I'm saying.
Now he's the second group. Ryan Smith, who is the owner of the NBA's Utah Jazz, as we mentioned earlier in our broadcast history here, a couple months back, said that Utah had also put it in for an expansion system for Salt Lake City. Now, the league has said it's not ready to consider adding to its current 32-team lineup, but it is willing to discuss a new team with any group that reaches out. The expansion fee is going to be around $1 billion. Now, and just for people getting their hopes up for an Atlanta team, God, I wish that would happen. That would be fantastic. It would be another team traveling.
Hamilton.
But the problem is they haven't resolved everything with Arizona yet. So until that sorts itself up and they're no longer playing at a 4,600 seat arena, it's unlikely that they're going to be moving forward.
Oh, we lost the co-host.
I think she's had enough.
Yeah, good for her. Yeah. So the thing of it is that $1 billion split between 32 teams because the players don't get any of that money. It goes all to the ownership. So expansion is just a way for owners to make money. Now, the thing is, with expansion also comes the opportunity for more NHL jobs, but there is some concern, that bringing in a team or two waters down the player pool. I I don't know, Aaron. What I mean, do you think there's enough hockey players in the world to stock another team or two?
I certainly think it's a possibility. Put it this way: everybody that loves all the crash and bang old time hockey has to realize that by expanding, yes, the talent pool is going to be diluted, but there are going to be more people fighting for jobs. So that crash and bang stuff that you guys claim to love so much is unfortunately going to have to make a comeback.
Oh,
They've
it
been
is.
working.
It's less than a player per team, really. I mean, players of when you figure if it's one like look what happened with Vegas. All right, they've been a contender from day one. Seattle, not so lucky, but they didn't have as much going for them in regards to how the rules were laid out for expansion. But the fact remains, I still think there should be another team in Toronto or one in Hamilton. I really think um, you know they won't get it because you're competing like $1 billion. What organization or group of financiers in Hamilton or Toronto would be willing to put up $1 billion? Would they even have $1 billion to put down? So yeah, there's a lot of North American cities, right, that in the U.S. that can get that kind of money, and Utah's an interesting opportunity, with where they are and how they are and what the community's like. It'd be interesting to see a team in Utah. Um, Atlanta again. I don't. I know why they want to do it, Aaron. It's what the third largest media center in the U.S. And
And
that's after New York and L.A.
can you imagine Turner Broadcasting get their
Well,
hands on that? It would be an
that
absolute juggernaut.
that's just it, right? I mean, Atlanta is, they have their airport is like the second or third busiest airport in North America. So, they have the financial wherewithal to come in again, but they've done nothing but prove they don't like hockey that much.
Yeah,
They
it's
call
a
it
tough.
Hot Atlanta for a reason.
It's a very very. I mean, it's a tough sell. It's a great sport, but unfortunately, they're not finished mangling it yet, so it's not quite ready for public consumption. I still see NHL hockey as being in its alpha stage. There are still a lot of bugs that need to work out, like goaltender interference, um, elbowing, boarding, charging. Not only that, TV distribution rights. I don't think you have to have a team in Arizona in order to maintain broadcast rights
Again, that's another
for the
reason why they don't
Northwest.
want to give that up because that's a big market as far as television is concerned. I think
Yeah.
fifth or sixth or something in the U.S. And there's 32 teams, so needless to say, they're up on the scale as far as importance media wise. But the way I look at it maybe isn't the way the NHL looks at it, but what I look at is okay. You're saying that you need to have Arizona because you want to have all that central media thing focus, right? But the focus is hockey's a failure in Arizona. So what we're hearing loudly, if you agree that Arizona is a big, media market, a big media market showing us how terrible the National Hockey League is and how it can't, support or create a team that's supported in a very big market. So, and then go to Atlanta, and if they end up leaving Atlanta again, I mean, this is why we have problems in the National Hockey League with credibility. We're right now they ensured that Seattle and Vegas have good teams, right? But really, Aaron, I think that came at the expense of other teams, multiple other teams that basically do not have the same kind of benefit or guarantees that they can ice a competitive team. We've got a few Canadian teams that are squandering, or they seem to squander every opportunity for improvement, like Ottawa and Montreal. We have this going on. So I don't know. $1 billion is a very attractive. I mean, billion. I can't do the math right now, but what's 30% of $1 billion?
30% of $1 billion would be $300 million.
A team.
Now, if you're splitting up $1 billion 32 ways, you're actually looking at approximately $31.25 per
Okay,
team.
so there we go. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's a goodly chunk of change.
It's 1/3, more than 1/3 of the salary cap.
Yeah.
And it doesn't increase the salary cap either.
No, that just goes directly into pockets.
That's right. And then what happens is, of course, then the teams, right, keep that money, but the players get some more work. They get another 50 jobs per team, something like that.
Yep.
40, 50 jobs, right? Okay, let's move away from Atlanta, and let's celebrate the fact that the National Hockey League could no longer, and I say no longer, ignore Rempe and his behavior. Is anyone surprised that what he did to Lyubushkin and then went on to Columbus and did the same thing, and now he's gone and done it again? Is anybody surprised that if you don't punish somebody, they just keep doing stuff?
Well, and that's the thing. His first hit on Bastion along the boards was one of those. Maybe we'll give it to you. You're a big guy. He had his head down. You were coming in off the boards there. Collisions like that happen. I didn't appreciate the fact the dude was bleeding, but there's that. Then his hit on Lyubushkin when he went face-off circle to face-off circle before hitting Lyubushkin, who was about 2.5, 3 feet from the boards. Oh yeah, no, that was bad.
And went airborne.
And then he turns around and hits Siegenthaler with an elbow to the head,
and doesn't take an invitation from McDermott to.
Nope. Now here's the thing: he has 54 penalty minutes. He's actually only played 56 minutes and 28 seconds of total ice time in his 10 games. Not only is he a menace, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. We need physical players in this league. People enjoy the big hits for some reason. It's the lizard brain part. But when you start hurting other dues-paying members of the NHLPA and you start sidelining players like that, eventually the league has to sit up and take notice. So, he got a 5-minute
a little while.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely did.
And the question is, why did it take so long for the Rangers player to be punished? But here's what I'll say about that. He's taller, so you can excuse him ramming somebody's head into the glass. If I'm not mistaken, high sticking has nothing to do with how tall a player is.
No, it's all where your stick makes contact with their face.
And the same should be true where your body makes contact with someone's face.
Yeah, if your shoulder happens to be at somebody else's head height and you are the one who is throwing the hit, the other player cannot protect themselves unless they submarine you. So,
which I think is for this guy, this is what I'm not a violent person, okay, not normally, but this is going to come across like violent. I really think that guys like him who take advantage of their height and use their height as an excuse to hurt people in the cranium area, because that's what I'm concerned about. Low bridging a guy going towards the boards, and if you see him coming, and just do a hip check kind of thing. And when he jumps in the air and he goes headfirst into the boards, maybe dies from a concussion against the glass, maybe the league will understand that, there's an opportunity here for something bad to happen. If eventually players decide, well, if I'm defenseless against the guy who uses his height against me, why can't I use my lack of height against him? It's reciprocity as far as judgment's concerned. And that's what happens with the National Hockey League. And what the National Hockey League has to be careful about is that there might be players that finally say, okay, a 6'8" guy's coming at me, I'm going to duck. and I'm entitled to duck. I'm not
Yep.
tripping him. I'm still standing. My legs are straight. His legs, your legs can be straight, but then you just bend down like a hip check, and the guy, tragedy will happen. But unfortunately, I guess this is what the National Hockey League needs to change the way they think, unless they figured it out finally. Unless they figured out that this is what's going to happen next, so he got penalized.
And here's the other thing. I think a few other teams are picking up on this. Um, Brad Marchand no longer has his 6'9" playmate running around with him.
No.
He's now also the captain of the Bruins.
Yes.
However, one of the things that Brad has always excelled at is doing things after the whistle. Because in general, those sorts of things in scrums aren't penalized. There was a Toronto player who recently took advantage of that, and he didn't get a penalty for it. He did get a $5,000 fine. However, if it's only going to cost me $5,000 to cross-check Brad Marchand in the face,
I guess you've seen the meme, haven't you?
I have seen the meme, and I am on board with this meme. Is
So
everything comes around again. You can be as big of a jerk as you want as long as you got your bodyguard behind you. But once that guy retires, look out, Chubb.
yep, National Hockey League players line up when they realize that high sticking Brad Marchand can only cost $5,000.
Well, and it was the same thing with Jake Dotson a few years back. Somebody speared him in the lower body area because
Ouch.
he had been known for submarining people, and he did actually break a Maple Leaf player's leg. And after they asked the player about the fine that he got for pitchforking him in the lower body area, he said, "It's the best $5,000 I've ever spent." So yeah, they'll pick up on it eventually.
The issue then, what we're talking about is, I'm not promoting players do that.
No,
I'm not promoting players submarining or ducking. I'm predicting that's what's going to happen. If they let that guy do that stuff, if they had to let him do any longer, well, what are you going to do as a player? You basically, hockey's a tough game, and if he's gonna charge you, and the boards are only a few feet away, there's two options you have. Do I take the boards, or does he?
And here's the other thing: Jacob Trouba only got actually Jacob Trouba didn't even get fined for taking a baseball swing at Trent Frederick's head. This is
Right.
another New York Ranger on a Boston Bruin. So if that happens, and Jeremy Swayman only got a $5,000 fine for punching somebody in the back of the head with his blocker. So if the Department of Player Safety keeps up the way they are, there are going to be a lot of issues ahead for the National Hockey League.
I'm a firm believer of, you can't have an ex-player do that job.
No, never.
You
ever.
can't have an ex-player do that job.
I don't think it has ever been more clearly demonstrated than having George Peros of the Montreal Canadiens.
And it's not just about, animosity that he has against certain emblems, certain uniforms. It's not that really, really bothers me. What bothers me is, from his mentality and perspective, it's a clean hit because he thinks it's a clean hit, which is something that he didn't exactly have a reputation for, playing clean hockey. So if you're hiring a guy to judge what's dirty, who played a dirty game, my question is this: what do you expect?
Maybe the next time they hire somebody, it should be from the pool of Lady Bing winners.
Well, that would be just as bad, right? Because that would be the mirror image of what we're talking about. There would be no, you can't even touch the guy. Really, what I think it should be somebody who understands the rule book. The only thing that should matter to the person in charge of that job is the rule book, and an understanding of the cold, hard facts of what is legal and what is not. Not within the framework of, well, in the league we accept this once in a while. No, we don't. In other times, you have to have a hard and fast rule. Consistency. And a guy who played in the league will not be consistent because they bring in their biases, whatever they are.
That's very true.
So it is what it is. Let's talk about Topi Roni sentenced in Finland court for rape. Flames renounce rights to 2022 pick.
Tapara Tampere, who's his Finnish Elite League team, made the announcement on its website Tuesday, saying that they had terminated his contract after he was handed a 1 year suspended prison sentence for a rape committed as a 17-year-old by the District Court of Helsinki. The Flames, who drafted him in the second round, 59th overall in the 2022 NHL draft, announced later yesterday that they had renounced the rights to the unsigned Roni effective immediately. Now, he has apologized in a statement on the Tapara Tampere website. He was originally first charged in October, with his Finnish team announcing he was stepping away from the team. The incident occurred in 2021. So we are seeing bad actions have consequences now. I do certainly appreciate that. Um, but yeah, this is another young fella who was in the wrong, proven in a court of law, and as a result has lost his livelihood.
And accountability needs to be the North Star. So the Avalanche beat the Flames. Mikko Rantanen is the reason why with a 4.9.
Yes, 2 goals, 2 assists to extend his point streak to 10 games. Led the Avs to a 6-2 win. Uh, 14 of Rantanen's 18 points over that span are assists, and his 10-game assist streak is actually his career best. Valery Nichushkin had a goal and 2 assists. Since the trade deadline, the Calgary Flames defense has been repeatedly exposed as incredibly porous, and this is hugely concerning.
Are we surprised? They traded
Um,
away their two best defensemen, didn't they?
they did. Now, the good news is it wasn't Brad Treliving that did that, because he was with the Leafs when it happened. But
But it is his fault.
Well, I'm sure Toronto fans will find a way to blame Calgary's defensive woes on Brad Treliving.
Yeah. And he didn't end up with any of those players, which would have been helpful with the Leafs. But the Leafs are what they are. We'll get to them in a minute. But let's talk about the Canucks and Thatcher Demko.
He is currently out indefinitely with a lower body injury. They are listing him as week to week. As we mentioned on Monday, he did end up going out in the second period. Artur Silovs has been summoned under emergency conditions from the Abbotsford Canucks. He's going to be joining them for Tuesday's on-ice session. The team has decided to clear some salary space as well and announced that Dakota Joshua, out since February 13th with a hand injury, has been retroactively placed on long-term injured reserve.
We only got a couple of minutes. Let's use it on the Leafs and Edmondson. There's all this talk about him being very competitive, Aaron. Have you seen anything that gives you that indication?
Well, he's certainly willing to take advantage of an opponent being held to apply a cross-check. We know that for sure. But yeah, one of the things I was really grateful for when we picked him up from Montreal was the fact that he made Toronto's life absolutely miserable during that bubble season when they went to the finals.
One of the guys that made
yeah. But I mean, that nastiness in and around the Canadiens' crease when he played for them.
They had three defensemen that helped carry them to the Stanley Cup final.
And he is one of those guys. And, you know, his willingness to carve on opposing players is something that I definitely appreciate.
And then you've got that guy that they hired and didn't look so good at the beginning of the year, playing on the fourth line, that can duke it up and is not as he's not an automatic -1 when he goes on the ice right now.
This is very true. As a matter of fact, he's had an absolutely stellar season. He's got 10 goals and 8 assists in 40 games with the Leafs so far. He was undrafted after his 4-year college stint at Colgate University. He's 6'2". He's 210 pounds. For those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, we are talking about Bobbert McMobbert, Bobby McMahon. He was signed to a 2-year contract extension at $1.35 million per. He was set to become a UFA this summer. So very grateful that they've actually signed him. He is going to be a very valuable addition. But yeah, it's really awesome. I am super happy to see that. The other good thing is, if his play does fall off again, that $1.35 million is variable in the NHL, in the AHL, so he can go back down to the Marlies if necessary.
At a lesser rate?
Yes, I believe it would be at a lesser rate.
Oh, okay. So he has a 2-scale contract.
A 2-way, yeah.
2-way contract. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So the Leafs play tomorrow. Tomorrow being Thursday.
Hmm.
Um, you know, the failure in Boston against Boston, the 2 losses, with Boston being the team that, will meet the Leafs. The Leafs now have a defense that's a little different, and it's not really fair, I don't think, to judge them the way they played against the Bruins because they were in the middle of that transition from adding these 2 defensemen, and now we'll see if these 2 defensemen that they added, and well, 3 really, but the 2 recent ones, we'll see what kind of impact it has on the defense. And if they don't play the Bruins, it's Florida. Or if they do play the Bruins and get by the Bruins, it's Florida. And no matter which way you slice it, dice it, or anything, physicality is going to be the key against Florida. The Bruins, not so much.
Now, and the Bruins did make a few additions at the trade deadline as well to make themselves tougher, and everybody said, "Oh, they're gearing up for the Maple Leafs. It's going to be another first-round exit." Woo! But I don't particularly see that as happening.
But
But they're
wait a second now. When you said first round exit, I'm confused because last year wasn't it the Bruins who went out in the first round?
was the first one out in the
Another first round exit? Is that what
first
you're
one.
referring to? Is it
I'm hoping. Um, as it came though to practice
because
today,
it
we
just
had
so happened the Leafs didn't leave in the first round last year?
no, thank goodness for that. I mean, their streak was long enough to be of drinking age, but that's fine. We're not overly concerned about that. Brody and McCabe were a pair. Riley and Labushkin were another pair, and Joel Edmondson has been paired up with Timothy Liljegren.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so that makes things a little bit interesting. Simon Benoit is now on the outside looking in.
yeah.
Um, I'm
Florida,
wondering
he goes in. Florida, he goes in. Boston, he goes out.
for sure. Here's what I'd like to see. I would like to see Benoit McCabe, Riley Labushkin, Edmondson Liljegren.
Benoit McCabe has been pretty good.
I mean, there's something there, So
Well, just because he's sitting out right now doesn't mean he sits out the rest of the time. He could very
this
well,
this
you
is
know,
very true. And the Leafs may decide to go with 7 defensemen, so that's
and
entirely a
they did it
possibility as
last
well.
year, and they could
Yeah.
do it again. They could
Mhm.
do it again. I mean, they do try to use the core 4 a little extra.
Final thought that I've got on this: they're going to be playing Philadelphia without Torts. I believe he's still serving his second game. I believe he still has 1 game left on his suspension.
Oh,
So
well,
that could make things a little more interesting as well.
we'll see. The last time the Leafs played the Flyers, they won.
They did.
So we'll see how it happens this time. All right, Aaron, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Glad to be here, Frank.
I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live, airing Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, live it. And by the way, ciao for now. Enjoy your week. Hump Day is here.